This came out about 3 hours ago. Blake Lively might drop emotional distress claim, says Team Baldoni in letter to judge.
Blake Lively has withdrawn her claims against him.
Believe me, I saw this coming from a mile away, and here we are with a major update. Miss Blake Lively has already dropped 2 of her claims against Justin Baldoni. Yep, the articles published last night confirm it. Her lawyer says they're ditching the emotional distress claims to focus on the main ones. What a cute little excuse.
Lively's counsel recently advised us in writing that Miss Lively is withdrawing her IED claims.
But if Blake seriously thinks Justin and his legal powerhouse Brian Friedman are just going to let her off the hook, oh honey, she might be in for a rude awakening. Blake Lively just did something her team swore they'd never do. She dropped 2 major claims from her lawsuit against Justin Baldoni.
Blake Lively has withdrawn her claims against him for intentional infliction of emotional distress and negligent infliction of emotional distress.
We're talking about intentional and negligent infliction of emotional distress, the emotional heart of her entire case. Her lawyers rushed to call it a routine litigation step, but no one's buying it. Behind closed doors, Baldoni's team demanded access to her mental health records to verify the damage. Instead of handing them over, Blake's team pulled out just like that, weakening her case. Officially, she withdrew those claims without prejudice. Legal speak for, we're quitting for now, but might come back later. It's like folding your cards at poker and pretending it's all part of the plan. But let's be real.
Making her case weaker.
When your whole case is built on being emotionally destroyed, and then you refuse to prove it, the optics aren't great. Baldoni's attorney, Kevin Fritz, didn't hold back either. He told the court Blake was trying to sue without real proof and slammed her team for wanting to have it both ways.
Team Baldoni Wayfarer is asking the judge to compel, quote, Blake Lively to identify her medical and mental health care providers, to produce her mental health records, and to deliver to the Wayfarer parties the necessary, duly executed HIPAA authorizations permitting them to obtain Miss Lively's medical and mental health care records from her providers.
It's not just that she dropped claims. It's the timing, the excuse, and the frantic scramble afterward. This isn't a tactical move. It's a defense mechanism meant to keep things under wraps, not get closer to the truth. She didn't want the court, the media, or the public seeing what was in those therapy records, so she folded. Period.
They allege the health-related information is highly relevant to Miss Lively's 10th cause of action for intentional infliction of emotional distress.
Now comes the PR spin. Blake's lawyers are out saying they're streamlining the case to focus on the big stuff. Translation: they're cutting off the weak parts before the whole thing completely falls apart. Just months ago, her legal team was bragging about exposing Baldoni for everything, from harassment to full-blown emotional trauma.
Instead of complying with the medical RFP's request for production, Miss Lively's counsel recently advised us in writing that Miss Lively is withdrawing her IED claims.
Now suddenly they're dropping the emotional trauma angle and telling us it wasn't even that important. That's not streamlining, it's damage control. Even the public is starting to notice. Fans who once supported her without question are getting quieter by the day.
However, Miss Lively has refused the Wayfarer party's reasonable request that the withdrawal of such claims be with prejudice. With prejudice means dismissed permanently.
The headlines that once painted her as a brave woman standing up to Hollywood injustice are shifting fast. Because when you start cutting major parts of your lawsuit, people wonder how much of it was real to begin with. And to make it worse, this isn't happening after the trial. It's all playing out before things even got serious in court. That just makes it look worse.
Lively wants to simultaneously A, refuse to disclose the information and documents needed to disprove that she suffered any emotional distress and or that the Wayfarer parties were the cause.
What Blake's team won't admit is that the emotional distress claim was becoming a liability. If she'd pushed it and the court found it weak, it could have shattered her entire story. By pulling the plug early, they're hoping to keep the rest of the case alive, but the damage is done. Now the public knows she couldn't or wouldn't stand behind the most personal part of her suit.
That's the key. After the discovery window has closed, right? We're in discovery now, as I told you.
The irony? They're still claiming they're moving forward with stronger claims like harassment and retaliation. But how are we supposed to take those seriously when the emotional foundation just cracked wide open? This whole move screams panic, not power. She's not refocusing the case. She's retreating from it.
Miss Lively cannot have it both ways. If Miss Lively wants to withdraw her frivolous IED claims, as we established, that means infliction of emotional distress.
Because deep down, even Blake Lively knows the story. She started spinning isn't holding up under pressure. The courtroom hasn't even heard a single testimony yet, and her team is already scrambling to clean up the mess.
If Miss Lively is unwilling to stipulate to the dismissal of her IED claims with prejudice, then the Wayfarer parties will continue to defend against them.
And now Justin Baldoni is done playing nice. What began as Blake Lively's emotional crusade is flipping fast, because Baldoni's legal team just dropped their shield and went full offense. On May 30th, 2025, lead attorney Kevin Fritz filed a motion that shifted the entire tone of the trial.
She must produce her medical information and documents as set forth herein.
They demanded full access to Blake's therapy and mental health records, everything, including HIPAA-protected notes, evaluations, and diagnoses. This wasn't just aggressive, it was surgical. Blake's whole case was built on emotional devastation, but now she had to prove it. Remember, this is the same Blake who, in December 2024, told the New York Times that Baldoni's alleged misconduct deeply affected her husband Ryan Reynolds and their 4 kids. Now, not a single page of proof would be shared. That's why Baldoni's lawyer Kevin Fritz made it crystal clear. Blake wants to accuse without being questioned. In his court letter, he called out her team for trying to have it both ways, keeping the emotional claims but dodging the receipts. They demanded full access to Blake's therapy and mental health records, everything, including HIPAA-protected notes, evaluations, and diagnoses. This wasn't just aggressive, it was surgical. Blake's whole case was built on emotional devastation, but now she had to prove it. Remember, this is the same Blake who, in December 2024, told the New York Times that Baldoni's alleged misconduct deeply affected her husband Ryan Reynolds and their 4 kids. Now, not a single page of proof would be shared. That's why Baldoni's lawyer Kevin Fritz made it crystal clear. Blake wants to accuse without being questioned. In his court letter, he called out her team for trying to have it both ways, keeping the emotional claims but dodging the receipts.
She must produce her medical information and documents as set forth herein. In her complaint, Miss Lively claims that the Wayfarer party's alleged misconduct severely impacted her physical, psychological, and emotional well-being. Moreover, Miss Lively repeatedly alleges that she has suffered and continues to suffer substantial damages, including but not limited to severe emotional distress and pain, humiliation, embarrassment, belittlement, frustration, and mental anguish.
And here's where Baldoni's strategy gets deadly. He's not chasing headlines. He's forcing Blake's hand, one legal document at a time. First, he let her build the entire case around her trauma. Then, after that emotional story was plastered, everywhere, from People to Vanity Fair, he challenged her to prove it. When she refused, he took it to court, not to the press.
They claim that this information is routinely exchanged in cases involving claims for physical and emotional injuries.
Blake's team wasn't ready for this kind of legal chess. Within 48 hours of that motion hitting the court docket on June 2, 2025, Blake withdrew both emotional distress claims, without prejudice, legal speak for, "we might come back later." Just like that, the very foundation of her lawsuit cracked. What remained was a thinner, weaker case focused on sexual harassment and retaliation, without the emotional weight to back it up.
Say, by alleging that she suffered physical and emotional injuries, Miss Lively has placed her physical and mental condition at issue and, in turn, must produce relevant information and documents.
Even Judge Louis J. Lyman from the Southern District of New York is starting to lose patience. Inside sources say he wasn't amused by Lively's legal team treating claim withdrawals like routine cleanup, especially after Baldoni's attorneys accused them of exploiting procedural loopholes and vague language to delay, distort, and dominate media coverage. One filing even suggested Lively's lawyers planned to refile claims after discovery closes, a legal sidestep to sneak back in, once the trial heats up. As Baldoni pushes forward, Blake's case looks less like a fight for justice and more like a PR stunt. Public opinion is shifting, court documents carry more weight than celebrity statements, and Baldoni's team knows it. Then came the real bombshell. In May 2025, Baldoni's lawyers subpoenaed Taylor Swift. This wasn't tabloid gossip. It was official court record. Baldoni's side accused Lively of pressuring Swift to post public support and delete private messages. Swift's legal team at Venable LLP responded fiercely, and the subpoena was quickly dismissed. But the fallout was immediate. On May 22nd, Swift went silent. No more public praise, no reposts, no backstage moments. According to insiders, the silence has lasted ever since. One source put it bluntly: they won't pick up where they left off. This wasn't just legal drama, it was personal. Swift, who once praised Lively, supported her on red carpets and shared holidays, walked away the moment she was dragged into the lawsuit. Dragging America's biggest pop star into your legal mess? Not a good look, especially when she's winning Grammys while you're begging a federal judge for sympathy, and it only gets worse. Baldoni's team brought in Ellen S. Garop, a courtroom ace who once worked at Venable, Swift's old law firm. This wasn't coincidence. It was a statement. Garop's experience with Hollywood litigation and SEC enforcement means Blake's legal tactics won't get any sympathy now.